Recently, I was looking for an alternative to paid models from Google, Anthropic, and OpenAI, and I tested the local model Qwen 3.5. It performed quite well, but it's a general-purpose model. Because of that, its results in coding tasks were fairly modest. You can of course use Qwen 3.5 for writing code, but since that's not its primary purpose, it's not particularly strong at least in the smaller versions of the model. So today I decided to test a model that's specifically designed for coding, Qwen Coder. If you look at the benchmarks in its description, it's supposed to deliver performance comparable to Claude Sonnet 4.5 while having a smaller size. And because of that smaller size, it can be run locally. Running the model on your own machine also means you don't pay for usage no matter how much you use it, so you can forget about buying tokens or paying a monthly subscription. But before we start, it's important to note that local models running on typical hardware will, of course, produce worse results than paid ones. Still, I'm curious to understand what kinds of tasks they can handle and how I can use them to reduce the monthly costs I currently pay for models like Gemini and Claude. Hi, I'm Nick, and I've been developing software for over 20 years. On this channel, I share my experience, insights, and thoughts about IT. So this time, I'll be running the Qwen Coder model on my desktop since it's a bit more powerful than my MacBook. That means I can use a larger version of the model. Here are the key specs. It's powered by an AMD Ryzen 7 CPU and has 128 GB of RAM. But most importantly, it has a dedicated GeForce RTX 4060 Ti graphics card with 16 GB of VRAM. And as you probably know, the more VRAM your GPU has, the better it is for running AI models. The desktop is running Linux, which I occasionally use for some of my projects. By the way, to run local language models on my machine, I usually use two tools, Ollama and LM Studio. I already have a detailed video on my channel about how to use these, so if you haven't tried them yet, definitely check that out. Today, I'll be using LM Studio. The model I need is available there. Qwen 3 Coder next. This model is specifically designed for coding, which is exactly what I'm looking for. Even though its size is almost 50 GB, it should run fine on my machine, because it can load only the parameters it needs into VRAM at any given time. That makes it possible to run even on consumer-grade GPUs. Alright, the model has finished downloading, let's select it. After that, it needs a bit of time to load into memory. I've got resource monitoring running on the side, and as you can see, once the model is loaded, almost all of the VRAM is being used. Okay, it's great that the model has started successfully, but now let's check if it actually works. Yes, it responds to input. Now let me try something programming related, just a simple hello world. Alright, as you can see, it responds pretty quickly, which is a good sign. Now a few words about the resource monitoring tool you briefly saw earlier. It's called NVTOP. It's free and open source, and I use it to monitor GPU usage. The dark yellow line shows VRAM usage and the blue line represents GPU utilization. Definitely give it a try. It's a great companion to NVTOP, which I'm pretty sure you already use. Alright, one more thing worth mentioning. I rarely use this Linux machine as a traditional desktop. Most of the time, it acts as a powerful server. Since it's connected to my home network, I usually access it via SSH from any of my other computers whenever I need it. So for today's tests with Qwen Coder, I'll be using the following setup. The model itself will run on this Linux desktop, which has plenty of RAM and a dedicated GeForce GPU. But the main machine I'll use to control everything will be my MacBook. The nice part is that you don't really need much setup to make this work. LM Studio already includes a built-in API that you can access over the network. It also provides a lot of configuration options for this local server, so you can tweak it exactly the way you want. Alright, the model is up and running. Now let's connect it to the Zed Editor. First, I'll switch the color theme to make the text more contrasty, so it's easier for you to see. After that, I open the settings and go to the LLM Providers section. Here, I enter the local network address of my desktop and the port where LM Studio is running. Great, everything is set up. Now let's finally move on to testing the model. To start, I'll ask it to write a simple Python function just to make sure that my multi-machine setup is working correctly and that I can use Qwen Coder directly from my editor. I'm intentionally not speeding up the response generation from my local LLM, so you can see the actual speed at which Qwen Coder runs on my hardware. And as you can see, the generation speed is quite impressive, especially considering that the model is around 50 GB in size. Alright, the response is in. The model handled this task without any issues, and as you can see, the setup, running the LLM on one machine and using it from another, works exactly as expected. Now it's time to put Qwen Coder to a more serious test. For this, I'll use the same task I previously gave to Gemini 3.1 and Qwen 3.5. The task is to create an HTML file that visualizes 6 sorting algorithms. It's a fairly complex task, and if you break it down into smaller parts, the model would have a much easier time solving it. But I'm intentionally not doing that because I want to directly compare Qwen Coder with Gemini, which by the way handled this task successfully. As for Qwen 3.5, it also managed to complete the task, but not the local version I was running on my laptop. Instead, it was the largest variant of the model, with 400 billion parameters, which I ran in the cloud. If you're interested, you can check out my previous video where I go into more detail about testing Qwen 3.5. Since it looks like the response generation will take quite a while, I'll skip the boring part and jump straight to the results. Alright, it looks like this task was too much for the model. After a long generation process, during which it rewrote its answer several times after finding errors, it eventually got stuck. As you can see, it genuinely tried to complete the task and generated a lot of code, but in the end, the task turned out to be too complex for it. Well, that's not a big deal. Let's simplify things a bit. This time, I'll give it a task of medium complexity. I'll ask the model to build a similar sorting visualizer as before, but only for a single algorithm instead of 6. Everything else stays the same. The user should be able to start and stop the visualization. There should be reset and seed buttons and so on. Again, I won't show the entire generation process to avoid wasting your time. Let's jump straight to the results. Alright, as you can see, Qwen Coder claims that it successfully completed the task, which is already a good sign. As a result, the model generated a single HTML file containing all the code. Just as I requested, both the CSS and JavaScript are embedded in the same file. That's good. However, I can already spot an issue with the closing tags. Let me fix those quickly. Hopefully, that's the only problem. Yes, 4 closing tags were misplaced. I don't see any other obvious errors, so now I'll try to open the generated HTML file and see if everything is implemented correctly, and most importantly, whether it actually works. Looks like the page opened just fine, without any errors. Let's start the sorting and see if it actually works. Yes, everything seems to be working as expected. The elements are being sorted, and the reset button works. Let me click through a few more controls just to make sure everything is functioning properly and there are no hidden issues. Alright, no errors, everything works great. I'm really glad the model handled this task successfully. Alright, time to wrap things up. In my opinion, the model is very good. It definitely won't fully replace paid models like Gemini and Claude, but it can absolutely handle small to medium-sized tasks when needed. If you want to use it for more complex problems, I'd recommend breaking the task down into smaller subtasks first, and then feeding those to the model step by step. By the way, if you compare Qwen Coder next with another local model like Qwen 3.5, then for coding tasks, Qwen Coder is clearly the better choice. Not just because of its specialization, although that's important, but also because it's more practical to run on consumer hardware. Even the 80 billion parameter version, which is around 50 gigabytes in size, ran smoothly on my desktop and delivered pretty fast performance. Alright, that's it for today. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. See you soon, take care.